Good morning. I was asked to come and talk about the police perspective of our function in providing safety in communities. So what I thought I would talk about is how we deploy and focus our resources and what the function of the police is from this side of the table. And then what I'd like to sort of dovetail into is some of the things that have happened in the past several months that is drastically changing police. An interesting thing that's occurred now is some reluctance on the part of police executives to even talk about the topic. You know, I was at a meeting last week where mid-level police supervisors were being trained, and there was an executive panel of police management, and a couple of those executives told the mid-level supervisors, "Don't worry, this will go away. Time will heal it." And I waited until they were done, and I stood up and I said that time won't heal this, and that the time for change is now, because you can put a lid on this simmering pot, and it'll stop it from boiling over temporarily. But when it does, it's going to explode. And we want to try to stop the explosion and get the community involved with policing in a way that occurred in the 80s. You know, in the 80s, there was a complete transformation of policing where officers went from driving around in police cars with windows up to walking around in the community and knowing the people that they were serving. And as the crack epidemic came into play, policing then focused on specific areas where crime was occurring, and policing became more tactical, and it became more invasive. And you have political futures that hinged on things like stop and frisk. Stop and frisk became something in Philadelphia that helped elect a mayor. So people voted for somebody that was being advised to encourage stop and frisk. Stop and frisk in New York City became widgets for officers to make each day. I tell police sergeants that the podium is the most powerful tool that we possess. And not a podium for a classroom, but the roll call podium. Every morning, police officers are addressed by their sergeant and given the marching orders for the day. And what that sergeant says, does, and how he or she acts is how those police officers go out and represent the department that they're members of. The roll call podium is the most important tool that we have. So when officers are told 5 stop and frisks today, they're going out looking for those 5 stop and frisks as soon as they can. Get their widgets in order, and then they can do whatever else they're going to do for the rest of the day, but they've listened to the direction from the podium. Stop and frisk is not some new concept. It's constitutional law determined in the 60s that was provided for the safety of police officers. It wasn't provided for the seizure of weapons or drugs or evidence. It was provided to protect police officers from attack by armed assailants. And when a police officer, based on his or her experience and the totality of the circumstances, felt that a person might be armed, might be, not is, not 90% sure, might be armed, they could conduct a frisk of the exterior garments of that person to see if a weapon was felt. This became a tool for police officers to go into a community and stop as many people as possible to try to get guns. And in theory, taking guns off the street is a good thing. But not at the sacrifice of individual constitutional rights. And not at the sacrifice of the community's trust in the police. The police can't do their job effectively without the help of the community. And everybody says that, and it sounds nice, but it is absolutely true. When I was a commander in the 25th District in Philadelphia, high drug, high violence district, we were focusing on a specific area that had the highest number of violent crimes in the city. And instead of having tactical elements come in, SWAT teams and specialized functions, I put officers out on foot patrol and told them to talk to as many people as they could. Not stop and frisk, talk to people. So they get information from the folks that the Chinese restaurant on the corner is the hub for drug dealing in that neighborhood. Great. So now the officers come up with solutions on what to do. They talk to the owner of the business. They talk about changing the hours of the business. They talk about posting of signs, no loitering. They talk about involving the owners so that they know that they're safe from the drug dealers, because a lot of times people turn a blind eye because they're afraid. And the officers start having a visible presence out there. We get somebody else from social services to address the kids selling the drugs. We're not the answer to every social ill that affects society. As a matter of fact, when we're involved, it's usually the last line. So you get other people involved in trying to provide outlets and resources for the folks that are creating the criminal activity. So now a drug dealer comes up with the idea that, hey, if we make complaints against these cops, then it'll push them away. Because we have a very good complaint process. Philadelphia Police Department has, I think, about 60 investigators that handle just complaints against police. And when the community talks about the police not being able to police their own, I can tell you that if you went to any police officer on the street in Philadelphia and said, what do you think about internal affairs? They don't have any nice things to say. Internal affairs is not thought highly of by a street cop. That's because they are very diligent, very thorough, and focused on finding wrongdoing. So complaints are made, and the drug dealer gets other people organized in the event of trying to retaliate against the police for interrupting that illegal economy. Now, Internal Affairs comes in and says, you got a problem. Great, let's talk about it. And they tell me about the variety of complaints and the folks that are involved in the complaints. Well, I'm meeting with that community on a pretty regular basis to let them know what we're doing and to have a direct line of communication with people that live in the neighborhood with the commander of that police district. So when the folks come in that week for an update on what we've done, I talk about this issue. They flood Internal Affairs with calls. And Internal Affairs calls me and says, we have 5 investigators going out with a list of about 30 residences that they have to stop and talk to people who want to talk about what they've seen and the behavior that they've observed of the police officers. Look, if a cop is acting wrong, see it. We'll take care of that problem. It doesn't help me if I have somebody who's creating a problem for the positive effort that we're engaged in. But if the real issue is trying to move the police away from addressing a problem that the community told them about in the first place, then there has to be support for the police. That doesn't happen if you're not investing in the community. So when I talk about the need for the community and police to be on the same page, they really do. It's not talk. So when events occur around the country that really shine poorly on police and community relations, it affects everyone regardless of where you are. Months before Ferguson, I said, I'd like to see body cameras. And when I talk to other chiefs, they're like, listen, we need more cameras like we need a hole in the head. Well, great. How many cameras do you have? Well, half of our cars have cameras. So, well, we have 13,000 cameras in SEPTA. 13,000 cameras on vehicles and platforms, which is where the cops work every day. And I want more. But why do I want more? Because that's video. It's not audio. This is a camera. It captures audio contacts between the community and the police. You know, it's not just that the stick swinging over the head of somebody. It's words that almost always have a more negative effect than that stick, because the words are every day. The words are every contact. And a camera makes a good cop great because they know it's there. It's a tool. And it makes a bad cop follow the rules. So when I talk about wanting to get body cameras on police officers, it wasn't a popular point of view. Now everybody wants it. Everybody wants it. When I was in Upper Moreland, the department had 40 officers, and I know in New Jersey it's the same as Pennsylvania. There are police departments with as few as 10, and most departments don't have as many as 40. And although you have very dedicated people and people who are professional and want to be objective, when there's a complaint against a police officer and one of the 40 is now conducting that investigation, no matter how objective or how professional that person can be, the community is not going to believe that that was an objective and thorough investigation. So I hired an outsider to do internal investigations. The Chiefs Association was, I don't want to say enraged, but thoroughly confused would be a good way to describe it. They said, why would you bring an outsider in to conduct an investigation of your own people? I said, because I want the community to know that it was credible, that that investigation was done in a way that was objective, and that we did something about it. I talk about having people outside of the department trained on the use of our cameras and our policy and the law regarding recording of conversations in Pennsylvania, and having this group of people be our Citizen Advisory Commission, more or less, where they pick videos randomly out of our archive to review once a week. Review those videos. And it's not only an attempt to find things that are done wrong, it's an attempt to convince the members of the community that what the police are doing is right. And to answer questions, and then to bring the police officer in and say, hey, Mrs. Smith, explain what you saw when you watched this video. Because what you see is going to be different from what we see. And what you believe is going to be different from what we believe. And if there's honest and sincere communication between two people explaining, then maybe we can have an effect on convincing people that not only are we transparent, but we're interested in making the community safe. So I look forward to conversations like this. I'm not, I don't want to say a typical cop because I'm not sure what a typical cop is. I was a very, very aggressive and very successful police officer who arrested lots of people and who helped lots of people. But I've done lots of unique things that many police officers and police managers don't do. So when I come to a conversation like this, it's a conversation for me to be able to learn, because I like to know what people are thinking and what they feel about the police, but also for me to be able to give you a perspective that you might not have considered. So I look forward to your questions. Thank you.